Welcome to Portland, Oregon. Everywhere you look, from the lush trees and Japanese gardens to the city streets, this city has it all. You will find a diverse family here, especially in the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local 48. But it hasn't always been that way. The rising statistics of minorities and women in Local 48 have been worked for, and it didn't come easy. It's 1940. Local 48's membership was not diversified. Every member was a white male. A year later, on December 7th, 1941, all that would change.
We're being attacked. It's an air raid.
We were at war. All the men were called to war, and civilians were called to defend the nation. In Portland, that meant we needed to build ships, and fast. Several of the shipyards that needed workers were located right here in IBEW Local 48's jurisdiction. They would employ over 100,000 men and women. Any able-bodied was asked to come, no race or gender distinction. So women came and did an excellent job. Local 48 employed not only women, but they were the only brotherhood out of the 14 unions that admitted black workers on an equal basis. Unfortunately, it was a temporary situation. When the war ended, women and minorities lost their jobs. An unfortunate and unfair setback, to be sure. But at least a foundation for diversity had been laid. Then, in 1954, the United States Supreme Court destroyed the legal rationale for Jim Crow laws, which basically had allowed an equal but separate status for Black Americans. In Brown versus the Board of Education, the Supreme Court declared state laws separating public schools for Black and white students unconstitutional. With that decision, the union felt it was time for a big change. Between 1957 and 1968, IBEW Local 48 began to start its own grassroots civil rights movement and moved forward in opening the apprenticeship to minorities. NECA started to fund community diversity projects to reach out to African Americans to apply for the apprenticeship. The most important project, the rewiring of a community art center. In the 1960s, this area was home to 80% of Portland's African American community. In 1968, Local 48 covered half the cost to have this building rewired when it was a thriving albino art center. The building was a symbol of commitment to diversity as they recruited young minorities. One of those qualified applicants was 19-year-old Keith Edwards, who went on to become the first African-American business manager in the entire IBEW. What was the culture like when you joined the IBEW?
It was basically a white male culture when I first came in. There were no women at all, and very few people of color. I was also the only business manager that's ever been elected on a white ticket here at Local 48. I knew there was one or two people going to run against me. In fact, one young man came to me and he said, you know, I've agreed to be the campaign manager for this one guy. He's going to run against you. So, you know, I prayed about it and I said, you know, either you want me to be business manager or you don't. I'm not going to worry about it anymore. And that night of nominations, I was the only one that got nominated.
Wow, and that was it?
That was it. That was it.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
In 1976, another young African American by the name of Terry Timms also found a career in the IBEW. When you were on the job site, what challenges did you face on the job site?
I had a little racism, you know, guys that didn't really want to show you how to bend pipe, really didn't want to work with you. I had a couple of journeymen that the only reason they worked with me because they had to. I had this one guy, and his name was Greg Teeples, and he ended up being a business manager, but he was telling me just stick with it, you know, and he kind of like kept me going, you know. Most minorities in the trade, you got to be good. Our survival was according to what we know. So my thing was, you know, they're not going to teach me, so we're going to find out another way to learn. You're not going to be able to slide through. You got to know, be able to read prints. You got to be able to bend pipe, and you got to be able to get along.
Terry persevered, and even his son joined the trade. How does it feel that your son is following in your footsteps?
He's an awesome son, you know.
How'd that feel when you were going to work with your son?
Oh man, I look forward to it. We get up every morning, and I'm really proud of him.
And in 1978, Donna Hammond entered the apprenticeship program.
I was on a split shift from the phone company, and I had applied to be an installer with the phone company, but I failed the interview. I passed everything, but I failed the interview. I couldn't be an installer in 1977
Why not?
because I didn't look like the other installers. But they said they had operators positions for me. And I said, I want to be an installer.
So what did you do?
I remember that my dad had told me for many years that I didn't want to be a machinist. I think he prepared me for that day, so I selected the electrician. And then I got a referral here to the Urban League. And they prepared me for the aptitude test, the hands-on exam, and history was made. I remember being on a project and the foreman asked me to be the foreman. And I said, you know, these brothers are not going to work for me. And he said, they'll have to, or they have to go talk to the steward. And at that time, Keith Edwards was the steward. He said, and then if they don't like the decision that Keith will tell them, then they have to come and talk to me. And if they don't like that, then they can leave. He said, look around. He said, you're the most qualified person that I have on the crew, and I need you to step up as foreman.
How'd that make you feel?
Pretty awesome. And I took the position. As I came through my apprenticeship, I was working with Oregon tradeswomen, and they were putting on a program to recognize the women who had worked in the shipyards. And I was talking to my mom about it, and she said, well, are you going to take your grandmother? I'm like, why would I take my grandmother? And she said, well, don't you know? So my grandmother was a welder's helper in the shipyards in the 40s, and I had no idea. So I like to say that I'm actually following in my grandmother's footsteps.
Then, in 1983, during a recession, McCoy Electric landed the job of renovating the historic Paramount Theater in downtown Portland. Behind me is the historic Paramount Theater. Its name has changed over the years, but the history remains. And that history is a big part of Local 48's history. The reason being is that at the time of its renovation, 5 of the 15 electricians that worked on this building were female. Max Landon, the contractor on the theater project from 1983, still remembers it well today. So what was it like to work on this project in the 1980s?
Well, it was a magnificent project, the importance to the city and to our company. And given the economy of the day, it was very important that it be done successfully and be done on time.
And when it came to being a pioneer and hiring women for the job, Max says he just hired the most qualified people.
In our industry, it's very high-tech and fast-moving, so you need the best of the best. And that should determine who you have on the job and not what gender or race they are. And with the management team I had, I could do that successfully. In that era, some management people were still not accepted. But those folks that persevered and worked hard to be accepted were accepted. And again, they're a vital part of our industry today.
In 1984, a man named Ricky Brame decided to leave his job in sales to join the IBEW.
The challenges I faced in the IBEW was acceptance at first. You know, when you come on a job, you always had to prove yourself, you know, and there was I won't say that it was a lot of backlash when we started walking on the jobs, but there was a little bit of uncertainty about people thinking, you know, if we're gonna make it, or what are we doing here? Why are we here? We trying to take their job. Like I said, a barbershop as a place to still reach out to young men. You know, I could have walked away into the sunset. You know, I'm still involved in a lot in the local, but it just gave me an opportunity to stay connected. I can walk in here any given day, these cheers are filled, and I say, young man, what's your goal in life? I don't know. I say, have you ever thought about the IBEW? You know, I'm always ringing the bell in here for the IBEW, so I'm not gonna take all the credit because we have a team of support people for these guys. Or I have, you know, an unsung hero feeling, you know, in my heart, because I can look at these guys and say, I changed their life. We changed their life.
Years later, from when Keith Edwards, Donna Hammond, Terry Timms, and Ricky Brame first started their apprenticeship, a lot of progress has been made.
Coming into the IBEW and I see so many different faces of color and women, it's relieving, it's relaxing to know that other minorities are in this trade.
I do find a lot of diversity in the workforce. Lots of women, minorities in the trade, all different ages, older, younger. First out of high school, through the different job sites I go to, there's definitely a presence, and I don't notice anyone being treated differently.
So the diversity in the job sites that I see, especially on the larger job sites, is that you see a lot of all walks of life coming in. Everyone has a different background, everyone has a different story. It doesn't really matter in the union, we're all working, doing the same job, and that's really cool to see.
I think people are starting to adjust to the fact that we're joining the men out in the field, you know. Most of the people that I've worked with so far, they've been very kind, very helpful, and very willing to share their knowledge and help me succeed. Being a woman in this industry is, I guess, very prideful. It feels good to be able to be out working with the guys and be one of the guys and still go home and be a lady at the same time.
There is no doubt the leadership throughout the years has helped push Local 48 to where it is today. Current business manager Gary Young says there's one word for it.
It's solid. It's solid. It was important to reflect the face of the community. I think they saw value when they had to hire minorities to accommodate the masses needed in the war effort. And once they saw, hey, you know, minorities are great help here. They're good, skilled craftsmen just like the rest of us. Why not reflect what the community is? That just gives us more flexibility and makes us stronger.
I think we have come a long way. They've got a ways to go, but that's, you know, I'm going to always say that, because we always have a lot of work to do. We need young people, we need everyone. A diverse workforce and a diverse leadership team is key to the success of the IBEW.
So while our history serves as a lesson on things we need to improve, let us also celebrate the advances we've made. It holds true for life, and it holds true for IBEW Local 48, Portland, Oregon, home for all of us.